Hello dear friends, I'm Jax Mandrick, and I'm expanding my first Top 12 list. The first list was all about video game compilations that should bring some of the best games of the past to the attention of a new generation of gamers. In particular, the highlights of the first list were games that had not actually been made, and some that had been produced but not made available in the United States outside of some long-deceased online services. The contents of the 12 collections in this list have all been available to American gamers in some fashion. In many cases, the original method of playing them can be difficult or expensive to procure, so these ideas are more plausible for eventual release. Whether or not they will see store shelves is entirely up to the publishers. Like my similar first list, I feel the need to address an honorable mention and why it didn't make the list. I really want Telltale Games to put all 5 WiiWare episodes of Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People on a disc for retail, and though it hasn't yet been announced even at such a late point in the Wii's life cycle, I think it still has the potential for release. Maybe it could even be made available for the other consoles as well, since now they all have some sort of point-and-click interface, and it may urge the Brothers chaps to make new Homestar Runner cartoons. The major reasons I had to remove it from the list: the series is rather a touch too recent, and I thought up a much better idea, with which I will start the countdown. Number 12. Gargoyle's Quest Trilogy, Trials of Firebrand. Gargoyle's Quest is one of the most underrated series of retro games. These platform adventures star one of the most irritating enemies from the Ghouls and Ghosts series, the Red Aramer, who is given the name Firebrand in this subseries. Because of the Gargoyle's origins, I suggest that the original Ghouls and Ghosts trilogy also be included, one game unlocked for each of the Gargoyle's Quest games that gets finished. I thought about doing it the other way round, but the Ghouls and Ghosts games are insanely difficult, especially since to win the games they have to be completed twice, and I'd rather give players a fair chance to unlock all the special stuff. That's not to say that the Gargoyles quests aren't hard, but Firebrand can at least take more than 2 hits, and you can save in his trilogy. Number 11. Nintendo Puzzle Collection. This set of Dr. Mario, Yoshi's Cookie, and Panel de Pan, known to us as Tetris Attack and Puzzle League, dropped in 2003 on that little Nintendo box of joy, but never showed its face outside of Japan. All 3 of these games have seen re-releases in some form or other on this side of the Pacific, but I think a fresh look would be worth the time, especially if they featured online play. Giving it a swift update for a release on Wii U shouldn't be difficult, and the Big N could also sweeten the deal with a few fresh revisits to other great old puzzlers like Yoshi, Mario and Wario, and the Mario's Picross games. Which, by the way, stuttering Craig and handsome Tom of ScrewAttack.com, I really like! Number 10. Donkey Kong World. This would quite definitely be a Nintendo console exclusive, for obvious reasons. All of these games were very successful, so putting them together in one package seems to be an instant win. If Nintendo was to remaster them with high-definition graphics, it would be even sweeter. I might even suggest that the Game Boy game be an extra, unlocked by, say, beating the 16-bit trilogy. Do not, however, require collecting 100% of the items in any of them to unlock DKGB, especially in the 64-bit games. I am not alone in declaring such a task too damn hard to be enjoyable. Number 9. Konami Collector's Series Greatest Hits. Dear Konami, you owned a huge part of our lives back in the NES and Super NES days, and you know how to do collections well. You could easily make a nice chunk of change by offering us a collection featuring some of your most beloved 8-bit and 16-bit games. If you like, you can even spruce up the graphics and sound of earlier titles. Let me think up a quick list. Entries from Castlevania, Contra, Gradius, and Metal Gear, plus some extras. To be particular, the Castlevania games would be the original, Simon's Quest, Dracula's Curse, Super Castlevania 4, and Bloodlines. Even though Simon's Quest is often maligned, it holds a special place in many players' hearts. You were already kind enough to give us fresh updates of Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night on that nifty PSP game, and we love you for it. So you can include those on this collection as well. One musical suggestion. Whether you remix the music or leave it all alone, there should be an option to play either the original Famicom soundtrack of Dracula's Curse or the NES version. The Contra games could include the original game, Super C, Alien Wars, and Hardcore. For the space shoot-em-ups, you can include Gradius 1 through 5, Life Force, Nemesis, and Salamander. We know about and love the PSP collection, but there are others, and the PSP is effectively a dead system now. The Metal Gear games would number 4. The NES Metal Gear and Snake's Revenge, plus the MSX versions of Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. As far as extras, I might suggest games like, but not limited to, Axelay, Gyrus, some arcade versions, and some Game Boy software. That would work. Any other extras are up to you. Have I mentioned already that we love you? Number 8. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shell-Shocked Anthology. Never mind the recent beat-em-ups, what we really crave is a return to the old school. The early 90s were a time of pop culture bliss for plenty of gamers who grew up with arcades one could actually find. One standout in that era was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where one could fight favorite villains from the TV cartoon with 3 friends. The arcade game had a direct sequel with Turtles in Time, which also saw a release on the Super Nintendo. Cashing in on the Turtles' popularity, Konami ported the arcade game to the NES and gave it its own sequel, the Manhattan Project, both of which were a huge improvement over the problematic first TMNT game on the system. Another Turtle beat-em-up was produced for the Sega Genesis, named the Hyperstone Heist. Put all these together and you have a great start for an awesome collection. Sprinkle in the X-Men and Simpsons arcade games, and maybe some extras like the Game Boy side-scrollers and all 3 versions of the TMNT Tournament Fighters, and Konami, you have a license to take even more of our money. Want to add one more touch of awesome? Add online play for all of the beat-em-ups. Yes, I am aware that several of them have been re-released on download services, but having them on a disc would satisfy nuts like myself. Capcom's done it, so can you! Number 7. Ultimate Battletoads. The uber-hard yet ultra-fun original Battletoads has been rightfully named among the hardest video games not just on the NES, but of all time. Even so, it's still a lot of fun and worth bringing to modern gamers. I would suggest one significant addition: a 2-player mode in which each player is immune from the attacks of the other. Once that's ready to go, you can slip in the rest of the games. The Game Boy version of Battletoads, the Super Nintendo Battle Maniacs, the arcade beat-em-up, and that team-up with Double Dragon. I wasn't sure how best to divvy up that last entry, if it belonged on this one or a Double Dragon compilation, so I figure the best thing to do is put it on both. That's why the next collection in the list is Number 6. Double Dragon Masters. The most difficult thing about this collection is deciding which versions should be put into it. Without question, the arcade beat-em-up trilogy is essential, but there are home versions which are just as worthy. The most obvious is the NES Double Dragon, but maybe the Master System edition would fit in just as well. Super Double Dragon needs to be in this one too, and then there are a couple of other games from the Technos library that could be unlockable, such as River City Ransom and Super Dodgeball. Like I mentioned in the last entry, the Battletoads team-up would fit in here just as neatly, and as with several collections already on the list, add online play and a winner is you! Number 5. Mario vs. Wario Lands. Super Mario Land was perhaps the first game to show how a platform adventure on a handheld game system could be done right. Its sequel, subtitled 6 Golden Coins, mixed that with aspects of Super Mario World and added a few extra touches, including the debut of Wario, who would go on to star in his own series of platform adventures. It's one of the very few instances I can recall where the subtitle became its own series, spawning 4 sequels on the handhelds, if one can call a Virtual Boy a handheld. I'd like to propose that all 7 of these games gets a collection, perhaps with full-color treatment. I suspect that Virtual Boy Wario Land, which may be the only VB game worth playing, can be successfully adapted to another system without too much difficulty. It really isn't extremely different from any other platformer, and if its 3D effects can't be reproduced on a TV screen, then we'll accept what can be done. Number 4. Mega Man Network. There was a Mega Man compilation in my first list, and damn it if there ain't another one in this list. I'll admit my bias. I have a soft spot for the Blue Bomber. Mega Man 2 was the first video game I ever finished, and it's still among my all-time favorite games. I've collected and played almost all of the Mega Man games, and beaten quite a few. The Battle Network series, mostly on the Game Boy Advance, aren't as fun to me as the run-and-shoot platformers, but I do think they're worth playing. I think all 6 games. Or is that 7? 12? Well, I can't count Double Team DS, because that's a combination of both GBA Battle Network 5 games, so that makes it 11. In any case, I think all 11 games, Battle Network, 2, both 3s, both 4s, both 5s, both 6s, and Network Transmission should be put together in one place. I'd buy it, and you would too. Right?
Right.
Number 3. Metroid History. I've made no secret of the fact that Metroid is my favorite game series to date. It doesn't matter whether I'm playing one of the two-dimensional platformers or one of the three-dimensional first-person adventures. I enjoy them all, Huntress accepted. And I will defend Other M's quality against those who attack its supposed flaws until the end of time. I do prefer playing one of the 2D games if I want to get through it quickly. Metroid History would contain the original game, Return of Samus, Super Metroid, Fusion, and Zero Mission, perhaps with remastered graphics. That's all that might need to be updated. The rest is perfect. I might also recommend adding Metroid Dread, but we all know that game is never going to be made. Number 2. Disney Adventures. It's true that movie and cartoon tie-in software was rampant right from the genesis of the video game industry. It's equally true that the great majority of licensed games were thoroughly horrid, but not all of them were so bad. Near the upper end of the quality scale in this matter were Capcom's Disney games. A good number of these are still fun to play even to this day, so I nominate a few for a revisit so that current gamers who haven't experienced them can understand that nameless quality that veterans understand. Those I nominate include, but are not limited to, Adventures in the Magic Kingdom, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, The Jungle Book, The Little Mermaid, and 3 pairs, the 2 Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers games, the 2 DuckTales games, and the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis versions of Aladdin. The only hiccup I can foresee in this lineup is that the Genesis Aladdin was made by Virgin, not Capcom. But as long as they're Disney properties, Disney Interactive can handle the publishing. Simple. Number 1. R64, the best of Rareware. When Nintendo picked up Rareware as a second-party developer, the British company poured a lot of joyful effort into pretty much everything they created. This is evident in the games that came out in the mid to late 90s. 3 of their most widely praised properties were born on the Nintendo 64: Banjo-Kazooie, Conker, and Perfect Dark. The first 2 appeared as drivers in Diddy Kong Racing, and Perfect Dark was an improvement on the formula that made GoldenEye 007 nothing short of a phenomenon. Since Rare is currently owned by Microsoft, R64 would collect Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and Perfect Dark on one Xbox 360 disc. It's true that Perfect Dark and both Banjo games are already available on Xbox Live Arcade, and Conker got an upgrade in the early Xbox days with Live and Reloaded, but all of them could be given a fresh coat of high-definition polish. I would also go as far as to suggest that the portable adventures be included as unlockable bonus content, and that a high-definition remaster of Blast Corps be slammed into the package. That's a game that could really use a sequel, but that's a topic of another list entirely. That finishes the second part of what has become a much larger list than I ever anticipated. What I said at the end of the first list still stands. If you have ideas for a legacy compilation that should be made for modern systems, feel free to let me know and I might assemble them into yet another list. However, please don't suggest stuff that's on collections that are already on the market, like Kirby, or stuff that is really too new, like Super Grand Theft Halo vs. Solid's Creed of War Hyper DLC of the Year Edition. Those will get compiled soon enough, believe me. I've been Jax Mandrake, and you've been entertained.